Should be streaming. Yes, this is Jaron Smith, everyone. Hello. If you're wondering why I have headphones on my head, I'm checking the audio for the stream to make sure it's actually coming through properly. I'm going to get rid of those headphones now. That was literally just check the audio to make sure there are no problems, no echo or anything else like that. So everything seems to be going fine. So my name is Jaron Smith. I'm an instructor with Noble Desktop. And if you're not familiar with us, Noble Desktop is a software training company in New York City. And we've been around for about 30 years or so it's not a new company. And we like to say design, code, and create at Noble Desktop. So tonight, I'm here to talk to you about how to get started in video editing. So my background is a little interesting, actually. So my first job out of college was actually teaching high school. Then several years later, I went back and got a master's degree in communication arts, where I specialized mostly in filmmaking. So it's an interesting environment. So when I did the filmmaking degree, I basically did a lot of video editing, a lot of video shooting, that sort of thing. And I started working professionally doing that. I worked in television for a little bit. And I've been teaching software classes on a lot of this stuff for, at this point, about 15, 20 years, I think. So I'm a bit old. You can tell by the gray in my hair. So a lot of people are interested in video editing, and honestly, thanks to sites like YouTube, Vimeo, thanks to the proliferation of social media sites that support video, it's one of the hottest areas of work right now. Just about every company is interested in expanding their traditional media from still images into videos and animation. But because of that, there's a lot of confusion about it. And we're going to do a couple things tonight to hopefully make it a little more easy to understand. We're going to talk about a couple things that should be, again, helpful to everybody to basically understand how the industry is and how it works and how you can get started in it. Now, we'll just do this. Okay. So these slides that I'm using, it's just a PDF that I'm viewing. It's actually viewing it in Acrobat. If you check the details of the video, of the live stream, they're actually available at the bottom. You can just download them if you want. There's about 30 of them or so. So hopefully they're not too boring. Okay. So we're going to be looking at several things here. We're going to be looking at key concepts in video editing. We're going to do a little disambiguation. I love that word. Because there's actually a lot of confusion when you say the words video editing. We're going to look a little bit about the history, because it started in film editing, really. We're going to talk about some of the software that's commonly used throughout the industry. And I admit, I'm from New York, and I've worked mostly in the New York market, so my experience is in that area. Okay. We're going to talk about the video editing process, the types of common projects a video editor might work on, and we'll also wrap it up with some salaries and job talk. If we have time, this entire session is about an hour and 15 minutes or so. If we have time, I'd like to go into Premiere Pro, which is a video editing program that we teach at Noble Desktop, and I want to show you a little bit about how the workflow would go. But really, most of this session is really an informational session about how you can get in the industry and what you need to know and what you need to do. Okay. Now, let's just do this. There is a chat here for anyone who is participating live, and if you have questions, I can read the chat and I can answer it. Should be a time for some questions at the end if we have enough time for that. But if you have questions that pop up while I'm talking, definitely say something. The live stream system we use is about a 10-second delay between me saying something and it popping up in the live stream. So if I don't answer right away, that's why. Okay. Now, let's look at this. So the first thing is, what is video editing? Okay. because this is seems to be an obvious question, but it isn't always. One of the things to keep in mind is that at its simplest, video editing is simply a way of combining different videos, audio, images, motion graphics, text together to create a new video. I specifically do not use the word compositing because that actually has a term meaning in motion graphics and visual effects. But you are combining videos together. Films, for example, are not shot in chronological order. They are shot in the order of lighting, the order you light each scene, actually, by the way. Neither are commercials. If you're going to create a promo, you might be taking video or images or creating text or graphics yourself and combining them together from completely different sources. Sometimes those sources are completely different sizes, by the way, as well. So it is effectively combining different, mostly video, together, with or without audio, though usually with audio, and creating a new form. Okay? At least that's the simplest way of explaining it. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. Okay? So another question I get is, what do editors actually do? Because if you've never actually seen the things that go into a finished video piece, it doesn't occur to you that it may be an issue. Okay? So editors combine raw footage together for a film or video project. So what do I mean by that? So the director shoots video. So someone's got an idea. Someone's got a story that gets written. Okay? The money is procured, actually, not made. Money is procured so that you can shoot that. So there's a budget somewhere. Okay? And the director is hired. They're the chief creative officer on a film project, for example. Now, you may have even a short film project. Let's say that you were doing something for a college. My daughter, for a college class actually on language, they shot a film project where they were basically faking being in a Korean restaurant, because it was actually a class on Korean, actually. They were learning Korean. And so they had to basically set up a set so they could use. So there was a little restaurant that we got permission to shoot in. We had to shoot exteriors of the restaurant of them walking in. We had to shoot the entire scene of them being in the restaurant. And inevitably, you take multiple takes of that. So the first time maybe it didn't work out well. Maybe they didn't like the timing. Maybe they made a mistake. So you may have 3, 4, 5, 20, or 30, or 200 possibly different attempts at the exact same part of a scene. And you record them all. So when you're finished with that, even that little short project, you may have hundreds of video clips to work with. Okay, an average edited 2-hour film actually has hundreds of hours of raw footage. Probably the most well-known example of that is Apocalypse Now. For the Apocalypse Now film, Coppola shot, what was it? I think almost 200 hours of footage for what eventually ended up being less than a 2-hour film. It was actually, the original cut was actually pretty shorter than that. So you could have a lot of video even for a short project. Okay. Short form projects like commercials, promos, they have a lot less footage, but they always have more footage than what you see in the final result. Okay. Someone's got to organize that. Someone's got to put that together. Someone who's familiar with storytelling so they can basically craft a compelling story. Okay. You've probably all watched films that seem to go absolutely nowhere. That's usually the result of bad editing. Okay. The footage is assembled. It gets refined. It gets cut down. It's kind of like a sculptor working with a block of marble. They chisel it away, chisel away, chisel away to reveal the final piece behind that. That's a lot about how films and shows are created. Okay. You add music, sound effects, graphics, visual effects, and when you're done, you have something that you can call a film or a video project. Okay. This is a quote from the editor of the Matrix trilogy. Basically, what he's saying is that editing is what makes a movie a movie. Again, if you've never actually seen this, it's actually quite interesting to see how much footage, how much raw footage goes into making a film or any other project. Okay. But in the end, it's the editor that crafts that. That's their job. Okay. So the question is, why is there so much confusion? Well, one of the problems is that the term video editing gets conflated with a lot of other terms. Okay. My youngest daughter is actually in her 20s, and her friends are all in their 20s. And I actually listened to a conversation they had at one point where they were talking about video editing, and they were describing everything except the actual editing. So a lot of people use the word video editing for anything that involves video. They see a video, it's mostly video editing. So they conflated it with motion graphics, visual effects, videography, and honestly anything else I can think of when it comes to video. But the actual editing is its own discipline. Okay. So motion graphics, motion design, animation, whatever term you want to use, by the way, applies traditional design principles, graphic design principles, to creating animated projects. Okay. So I want to sell a product. I can do that with a print ad. Okay. I can do that with a commercial. I can do that with a promo on social media at this point. And I got to decide whether that's going to be I shoot video of it, if it's going to be video, or if I can build an animation for it. Sometimes animations can convey more information than just shooting video. Okay. There's a link on these PDFs if you download the PDF. That'll basically take you to some examples of motion graphics in this case, or visual effects, or that sort of thing. Okay. Now, visual effects. It's the process of creating imagery for adding to video. So if you ever watched a movie with an explosion or spaceships or any of that, that's all visual effects. But visual effects are also simpler things. This actual shot is of a tube being pushed into a patient's mouth. They weren't really going to push the tube into the mouth. So they basically shot the actress, the nurse, miming the movement of the cable of that tube. And they basically built that tube in a 3D program and composited them together. So it's entirely digital. Okay, entirely faked. Now, fine, interesting, great skill, but it's not technically what we'd call video editing. Okay. Videography, the last one of this disambiguation. It's the process of capturing moving images. Okay. Specifically being an electronic device, because in general, film cameras used to be actually film, and then with digital, obviously. So effectively, when you're capturing or recording your media, that's videography. Okay, so if you go and shoot a wedding, that's videography. If you have someone shoot an event for you, record a seminar, that's videography. It's the process of actually making the video that will eventually be edited, but it in of itself is not edited. Okay, so really what video editing is, I said its simplest is putting different elements together. Okay, so you're combining images, and you're combining video, and you're combining text maybe. Okay. But in a more complex level, it's basically three main parts. There's the theory of video editing. Why do you make certain decisions? How do you place one video next to another and have it look seamless? Editing is called the invisible art. If you can actually tell it was there, it's probably bad editing. Okay. But the practice and technique of how to do that, that's usually what most people focus on. How do I cut this? How do I assemble this? Okay. And then technical knowledge. So a lot of things in video are a bit confusing. Frame rates, dimensions, aspect ratio, pixel aspect ratio. There's a whole bunch of these things, by the way, actually. Knowing what the different standards for high definition television and now ultra high def, that's the 4K and 8K you've probably heard of. That's all technical knowledge a video editor has. Okay. Effectively, I need to know not only how to bring the footage in, what to do with it once it's there, but I also need to know how to send it out so that whoever we're sending it to, however we're deploying it, will be able to use it. Okay. Social media, for example, has lots of different sizes and standards that you can adhere to. If you're creating content for your YouTube, that's one set of standards YouTube likes. If you're creating content for Vimeo, another video sharing service, they like their own standards. If you're creating content for Instagram, for the feed, they got a couple of different sizes for video they'll take. Okay. If you're creating content for Instagram Reels, they've got their own sizes, so do stories. So there's a lot of technical things that go into being able to output that video properly so that the people you want to be able to view it will be able to do so. Okay. It's fun. It's enjoyable. But it's a little confusing if you're not used to it. Maybe some of you have created graphics for the web or graphics for print design or just exported a JPEG. Okay. Think of that, but now you have a lot more variety. And with so many social media platforms popping up that make their own rules for how video they want to be, it's a lot more variety all the time. But it's fun. So I used to be a professor of communications, actually. So I can't do a seminar without a little history. A little history. Just a little bit. Okay. So, in the beginning of film, there was no editing. Okay, the actual first film that was ever displayed. I want to play this. Let me actually grab that. I'm gonna grab that and drag that into the window. Is this? It's the arrival of a train at the station. Okay. This is the first publicly displayed film, if I recall correctly. And for the record, this is literally all it is. There's a link if you download the PDF to view this on YouTube. But if you basically Google or YouTube search Arrival of Train at Station, it's an 1895 film by the Lumiere brothers. I didn't pronounce that properly. I apologize. And basically, this is all it is. This is all film originally was, by the way. It was simply such a new medium. They were simply chronicling or capturing or documenting events. So you might have a film of, like the old Edison films, a dog barking, or a couple dancing, or someone lifting up weights. That was a film. Okay. Because it was so new and no one had ever seen moving imagery before, they just basically stuck it in front of whatever they could find. Apparently, by the way, when this actually was first displayed, it was actually quite terrifying. People apparently, it's recorded in the original, when they originally showed this, people were actually scared. They thought an actual train was coming at them because, again, they'd never seen anything like this before at all. Okay. Now we look at this and it's like, okay, whatever. Okay. But that was where this all started. Okay. So they were simply chronicling events. There was no need to edit that. They would simply basically put the camera down in front of something that was happening and just record it. Okay. Then they would develop it and a whole bunch of other processes and they could show it. So the first actual editing in a film is The Great Train Robbery from 1903. This is a film by Edwin Porter. I'm gonna pull that in. And it's 1903. So by today's standards, obviously it's not particularly impressive. But again, nothing before this had ever been edited. It was simply chronicling events. And this film actually pioneered a lot of the traditional editing techniques that you see even today. Let's let you watch that a little bit. So from there, editing got a lot more complex. So did the actual content and the stories. Okay. So I'll stop that. But yeah, if you want, you can just search on YouTube for The Great Train Robbery. It's actually, if you're into classic film, it's actually kind of interesting. But it's interesting to see how it came about. So again, no editing. Several years later, we got some editing. Okay. Now, the form of editing basically evolved from there. It got more and more complex. The Russians, actually, the early Soviets, had a lot to do with the development of editing as a process, filmmaking as a process. Okay. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're going to become film historians. That's not. It's interesting to know where this came from, but it's not necessary in order to actually edit something. Okay. Though, again, there's a lot of really good books on this if you're interested, and it can help you understand editing as a craft and editing as a art form, if you're interested. If not, let's dive into some software. Okay. So, originally, everything was shot on film, and film was developed, just like film, for those who remember film cameras. And then it was basically cut. A lot of the editing software now uses a straight razor blade, a safety razor blade, as its icon for cutting. Because in the old days, that's actually how they would cut film. They would cut it, and then they would splice it or tape it together. Okay. Now everything we have is digital. Everything. When I first started, film editing was mostly on its way out. You still see a few people, like Spielberg does shoot on film for his films, but most everything else is recorded digitally. And it's edited directly in your software. Okay. Now, there's a lot of different softwares that exist. And again, this also causes some confusion as well. Because some of the software has multiple uses. Okay. So for video editing, Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, Avid, DaVinci Resolve. Okay. Now, why is this confusing? So, one, a lot of them have similar names. Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, Avid are all straight editing programs. Avid is actually probably the oldest, actually. We'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later. Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro, pretty common. Final Cut Pro is made by Apple. Premiere Pro is made by Adobe. DaVinci Resolve is also an editing program. DaVinci Resolve is interesting because it has a free component. But DaVinci Resolve started off not as a video editing program, but as a color grading program. And it's still mostly known for that. Its editing features are secondary. There are people who edited it. There's audio editing programs like Apple Logic, Avid Pro Tools, Adobe Audition, Audacity, also a free one, by the way. I tried to add one free one, by the way, in each category. Okay. Now, the problem for audio editing tools, it's not really a problem, actually, for them. They tend to pair, if you notice, with video editing tools. Adobe makes Audition and Premiere Pro. Avid, Pro Tools. Final Cut Pro is made by Apple, so is Logic. So very often you get a video editing program paired with an audio editing program, which actually makes sense. But you can do basic audio editing in video editing programs. I know people who've edited podcasts in Premiere Pro rather than learning Audition or rather than using Audition. I'm not suggesting that, but it is possible. So this causes some confusion because you'll see people using software that isn't necessarily what it was intended to do, but it still works. There's two really common programs for graphics. There are some free programs for this, but they're not anywhere near as common. And I basically was staying with two-dimensional graphics programs and get the 3D ones. After Effects is made by Adobe. Again, pairs well with Audition and Premiere Pro. And Apple makes Motion, designed to directly work with Final Cut Pro. Okay. Now, while After Effects is a graphics creation program, it's used for two-dimensional animation, mostly motion graphics animation, and also visual effects and compositing. However, there are people who use it as a video editing application, even though that's not what it's intended for. Can it work? Yeah. Is it necessarily the easiest process on the planet? No, not really. But again, people use software for stuff it's not intended for all the time. So, this is one of the things that causes the confusion. People use software for things that maybe it's not the best fit for. For those of you, if anyone here is a graphic designer, if I were to ask you what program to make a logo in, you'd probably say Illustrator, which is a very common answer for the record for graphic designers. But there are people who make logos in Photoshop. There are people who make logos in InDesign. There are people who make logos in Microsoft Paint. Okay. Again, I'm not recommending any of those things. I'm just telling you that there are people who do those things. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of confusion exactly in what software does. As a software trainer, I've actually had people come to me for video editing training and they talk about After Effects. After Effects, yes, you can edit video in it, but it's really not a very easy process. It's not built for that. Okay? After Effects is built to make graphics and to make visual effects and add those things into your video projects. Okay, I've, again, had people who wanted to edit audio in Premiere, which it can do to a very limited extent, but really, if you want to do any serious audio editing, I'd recommend an audio program. Okay, so again, this is part of what causes that confusion. Now, I am here representing Noble Desktop, so I'm going to basically just do this one little call out. At Noble Desktop, we have a video editing certificate. And the 3 programs we cover in that certificate are Premiere Pro, Adobe Audition, and After Effects. Okay. We also teach Final Cut Pro as a separate class. But there are plenty of places throughout, either online or with in-person classes, where you could learn Avid, DaVinci Resolve, Pro Tools, even Apple Motion. Okay. Right now, it's much easier than it's ever been in the past to learn any software you want. Even though I personally am mostly a Premiere Pro, Audition, and After Effects user, I've used Final Cut Pro for years. When I did my master's, we cut on Final Cut Pro and Avid actually all the time. So it always helps if you can learn more software. If you're going to work freelance, the thing to keep in mind is that software has changed based on its use in different industries. Okay. So when I went to school, I did my master's, which was quite a while ago at this point, actually. The 2 main programs for professional editing were Avid and Final Cut Pro. Over the last decade or so, Premiere Pro has overtaken Final Cut in a lot of places. Okay, so maybe Final Cut Pro will come back. Who knows? Maybe DaVinci Resolve will become popular. Certain things from video editing can be applied to any software. Concepts are the same. Organization is the same. And I'd argue that things like technical issues of video are the same. But the more software you know, the more marketable you can be. Okay. If you're looking for a job, then you would need to use the software that the company you're applying to uses. And we'll talk about that a little later, by the way, about what software is commonly used in different areas. And that's going to have both a industry component and a geographical component. Certain software is more common in different areas because certain industries are bigger in different areas. Okay. Okay, so we'll talk a little about the editing software that exists. Premiere Pro, so maybe Adobe. Okay, and it's, for the record, been around for a very long time. I've personally used Premiere Pro for more than 20 years. And the version I picked up was not the first version. So I believe at this point Premiere Pro is about 27, maybe 28 years old. Okay. So originally you saw Premiere Pro used a lot in corporate video. It ties in really well with Adobe programs, After Effects, Audition, Photoshop, Illustrator, that sort of thing. But a few years ago there was a change in how Final Cut works. So a lot of places that were using Final Cut for their editing, like CNN, BBC, Fox News, switched to using Premiere Pro. Okay. Mostly, it's not commonly used to edit full feature-length films, though you have seen it used in Deadpool, Gone Girl, and Terminator Dark Fate, actually. That was kind of cool. Okay. Final Cut Pro made by Apple. It was actually made directly to compete with Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro is actually a bit older. And a few years ago, Final Cut Pro, when they hit their version 10, changed the way they look. They changed the way they look, the way they work, and they operate. And it actually alienated a lot of people. A lot of their professional user base, pretty much. So you started seeing it fall out of favor. And companies, it went to either Premiere Pro or they went to Avid. We'll talk about that in a second, too. But it's still loved by certain companies. I worked at MTV a few years ago, and they were still using it. Okay. Companies like American Red Cross, Penguin, Random House are still using it. So you still see it. It's not like it's disappeared. But it doesn't have the same market share that it used to. Okay. Films like Social Network and Girls Dragon Tattoo edited in it. So were a bunch of others. Okay. It was actually at one point very, very popular in the independent film circuit. You had a lot of films at film festivals that were edited in Final Cut Pro. Again, based on some changes they made, some of that did go away. But it's still a pretty powerful, pretty major competitor in the editing field. Okay. Avid. Avid is actually considered by most editors top of the heap. Almost every major film in the last couple decades have been edited with Avid. Almost every major television show on the network level edited with Avid. Okay, so most network television editors and most Hollywood film editors are Avid editors. Okay. So the list of movies it's been used on is just longer than anyone can name. But The English Patient in 96, Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018, and just about, again, like I said, almost every film that exists. Again, Final Cut Pro has been used in some, Premiere has been used in some, but Avid overwhelmingly has the major market share when it comes to high-end film and television production. Okay. So, again, depending on what you're doing, knowing one or two or possibly all three of these softwares may be helpful. Okay. So, a lot of this about what software you need to know, how much you need to know, and what you need to know, will vary massively depending on what you want to do for a living when it comes to editing. We'll look at some of that too. So the market share for these is actually kind of hard to find. I was able to check a couple of companies that track this. They were looking at numbers around like 25%, 23%, 28%, varies here and there for Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro. And they were looking at less than 5 or 10% for Avid. Again, when they look at the entire industry, that probably does make sense, though Avid's probably a little low in that case, by the way. Because Avid, again, was basically geared towards a very specific segment of the really, really high-end filmmaking crowd. Okay, so Premiere Pro and Final Cut are sold as software solutions. Avid was usually sold as a hardware and software solution. So you didn't buy the software Avid, you bought an entire Avid system. So its price point was actually considerably higher. But again, it's interesting. So what do video editors actually do? Or what's the process of video editing, really? So depending on what you're doing, there's actually, when I went to school, there were 3 stages of working on a video production. We had the pre-production stage, the production stage, and the post-production stage. Okay, so editing is part of the post-production stage. Okay, pre-production was all the planning and securing your finances and hiring your cast and crew, scouting your locations, all the things that go into the planning work for any production. Okay, now if you're thinking, oh, that's good for film, but how's that affect me? Well, if you are going to shoot an event, there's pre-production involved in that. Proper planning prevents poor performance. Okay. The actual production, the shooting, the creating your video content, creating your content, that's the production stage. Okay. Editing was brought in at the end of that. Okay. So editors are part of that post-production, that final stage where everything comes together. So you've planned everything out, you've got your money, you've hired your cast, you've hired your crew. You go to wherever you need to go and shoot that. Maybe that's your local park. Maybe you need to rent out space in Central Park. I don't know. But that's your production. You create this content. And then you have all this content, by the way. Even if you were going to just shoot someone walking down the street, you're probably going to shoot that more than once. Maybe the lighting was off. Maybe someone got into the way of your shot. Maybe your camera couldn't keep up with the person walking and you lose them. So you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 100 takes. Who knows? That's got to be organized. Okay. So in video editing, everything, like every other work of creation, starts with a concept. There's some kind of concept, a story involved here. Okay. Now, usually for the video editor, it's not the video editor that comes up with that. It's someone else. Okay. So a writer writes a story. A director has that story rewritten, possibly several times, by the way. And that becomes what they produce. Okay. Now, if you're doing something narrative, you'll have the script in front of you so you know what the story should be. But very often in the editing process, new things are revealed. Maybe something doesn't work the way you intended it to, or the way the director intended it to, really. Maybe you have to come up with a workaround. Okay. But everything starts with that concept. If you're producing your own stuff, maybe you're just going to be creating video for social media purposes. Okay, maybe I want to do a skateboarding promo for the local skate shop. Okay, in that case, I am coming up with everything. So I come up with a concept for that. I'd actually write out my idea of a story for that. What am I going to tell? What am I actually going to, how am I going to get people involved in caring about this skate shop? Okay, that's my story. Now, I might create mood boards. Mood boards are just collections of images or video, things to inspire the look and feel of this project. Okay, I'll start with those. Maybe we need a script. Do you need a voiceover? Do you need dialogue. Okay, and if you're writing that script, I hope you can do that. Have fun. Maybe I gotta hire someone to do it. If I'm doing, again, back to my skateboarding promo, that might have a voiceover. Okay, I can write voiceovers. Okay. Once you got that script, are you going to shoot your own footage? A lot of promos, a lot of content for modern social media comes from stock houses. Okay, that means you got to assemble, shoot, or organize your footage. Okay, the assets, that's what we're calling this. Okay, scratch audio is the term for audio that will not be the final audio. So I do not like the sound of my own voice. So I try to avoid doing voiceovers. Though I can kind of do them. But I've actually worked with professional voiceover artists, and they're infinitely better than I am. So, but until I've got everything in place, I'm not going to use them. So I might just record some scratch audio myself of a voiceover. Okay. Storyboard edits, assembly edits, and rough cuts are the stages of actually creating your content. We're going to look at that actually a little bit later if we get into Premiere Pro. But effectively, as I said, video editing is about refining. So you start with rougher and rougher and rougher content, and you polish it to get what you're looking for. And that's what these different types of edits are. Okay. The Final Cut lock does not mean it's the final version of your film or project. It simply means it's the one nothing's going to change after it. You've got all the video you want in the order you want. Now it's time to add effects. It's time to add compositing. It's time maybe to add graphics and have those created. Okay. Do you need sound effects? Did you get that final approved voiceover audio by someone who has a really nice voice? That's your sound mix. And then once all that's wrapped up together in a nice tight bow, you can deliver your project to your client. That's a simple version of the process. Okay. Now, not everything will require all this. Maybe you don't actually have a voiceover, so maybe you don't need a script. Maybe your promo is just going to be edited against music. Okay, no problem at all. You wouldn't need a traditional voiceover script, or you wouldn't need a traditional actual dialogue script, but you still have some kind of idea for a story, so some kind of concept. Okay. Maybe you just write that out, your plan for what you want to show. So not everything will require all these steps. Maybe there is no audio in your project. Unusual, but possible. So maybe you don't need scratch audio. Maybe your client gives you, and assuming you're working for a client, by the way, the final recorded audio for the voiceover, assuming you're using a voiceover. Okay. Maybe they've got their music rights locked down, and they give you that all right away. Great. Less work for you. That is, of course, assuming that they have the rights to that music. That is, of course, assuming that everything is prepped and ready to be edited, because it may not be. In which case, maybe there's more work for you. It's always a lot of fun in this. Okay. So, what types of products do video editors work on? So, some editors, like film editors and TV editors, are doing narrative projects, something with a story, something with a script. Okay. Now, that could be something as simple as, I don't know, simple is the right word, but something like a sitcom, or it can be a procedural drama. Who knows? Okay. A lot of us like me, work on advertisements and promos and commercial stuff. Okay. That's called short form things. Okay. A lot of short form. Okay. Maybe you work on music videos. Okay. Maybe you do corporate video. So possibly I've done a bunch of presentations and seminar videos. Those can be interesting, by the way. Okay. Now, I've got a bunch of friends who work in news. They cut a lot of interviews and documentary style footage. Okay. Maybe you're lucky to travel. So maybe you're doing travel logs or travel promo, something very popular right now. Okay. Or perhaps you do want to edit weddings, sports, and events. No problem at all. There's a lot of different types of content people create. Now, for social media video, a lot of times what you're seeing are short promos. Okay, so it's still the same kind of promo cutting or commercial cutting that you see. Usually it's shorter. Okay. But these are some examples of the type of projects that video editors very often get called to work on. Okay. Now, specifically in all of this, and because I'm focusing on the editing process itself, I'm thinking mostly of assuming that the footage has already been created. I'm not thinking that you have to shoot it yourself. I'm thinking that it's already been shot by someone, and You're basically being tasked with creating the project. Okay, but that's not always the case, as we'll see in a little bit. Okay, now most people edit video not for fun but for profit. It's fine. Can't fault you for that. I know I do. So, what do you make? Okay, now this is actually one of the really tricky things, because the information on various industries and how much they make is actually really kind of tricky to come by. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. There are actually trade organizations that do keep track of this in various industries. If you're a graphic designer, for example, you might be familiar with AIGA, or Graphic Artists Guild. They actually do have surveys of this. But the surveys tend to rely, when you rely on a survey, of people responding accurately. It's not always the case. So another place to find information on salaries, so if you're going for a job, are basically the companies that find you jobs. Glassdoor, Indeed, they actually keep track of the industries themselves, and they have salary information throughout their site. It's actually pretty cool, by the way. Okay, so this is from Glassdoor.com, which is, if you're not familiar with it, they basically is a job posting site and a career site. It's actually pretty good. So for them, a video editor is involved in the production of video, post-production, and filmmaking. Okay, no problem at all. They had a range in salaries, by the way. And these are from, because you can actually break this down by areas and regions. This was from the Northeast region, if I recall correctly. They had a range starting around $38,000 and tapping out around $112,000. Okay, and that was just for the job title video editor. There's actually a couple other titles involved in this, actually. There are junior editors, senior editors, editors. Sometimes there is no differentiation at all. Look at that as well. But they're average about $65,000. Okay. And that was just video editor. Okay. Now, senior video editor is usually a managerial position. Senior editors manage junior editors, and they're more involved in basically the overall oversight, and as well as editing themselves. Okay, so yeah, so senior position. So they had a slightly higher range. Okay, 50,000 to 134 was what Glassdoor was reporting. Okay, so the average was around 81,000. Okay, not bad. Now, by the way, not mentioned here, I didn't include it, but there's actually also a job called junior editor. The junior editors made less, and sometimes it's called video editor, sometimes junior editor. It depends. Some places that hire editors don't use that junior senior editor system. They simply just call everyone editor. Okay, so it varies a lot. Keep that in mind. But you're looking at a salary range that's a bit higher than traditional design jobs, traditional print design jobs. But if you really want to get wealthy, I suggest going into banking or finance, I guess. Editors don't starve, but they're not going to be millionaires. They're not. Okay, but it is actually a respectable job, and it is actually can be a pretty profitable job. Now, these are actually looking at the salaries of employees in general. If you're going to freelance, it's a very, very different experience, because when you're freelancing, you're basically doing from client to client, contract to contract. And so depending on whether you're doing on-site or off-site freelance, you could actually make a lot more money. It does vary. Or I guess you could make less money. But it does vary. Most of the editors that I know, they're not staff positions, they're freelance. So again, I'm from New York, so you might spend a couple days working for True TV, or a couple of days working for Discovery Networks, or that sort of thing, or Fox News. They're big actually in New York, actually. So it varies. Maybe you're working at one of the networks, ABC, CBS, and all their pay scales are very different. So keep that in mind. But it varies. Okay, so this is an actual job posting for a video editor, by the way. This was from, I think, Indeed.com. Okay, so the company is Overtime. I didn't actually know who they were. I had to look them up. They are a company, and they make videos and social media content for sports. They specialize a lot, apparently, in like high school sports. Apparently, is what it looks like. Okay, so they're basically looking for an editor. And that was their job title, by the way, video editor, for content on their YouTube page and other social platforms. So basically, a social media editor is what this job is. Okay, and you're working with a social media team, which makes perfect sense, actually. And Apparently, I was looking at actually their content. It's not bad. They do actually mid-length and long-form documentary-style reality programming. So basically, think reality TV, specifically from a high school sports perspective. That's basically what they make. Okay. Now, if you look at who you are section, it's basically asking for your skill set. They want people with experience. Okay, definitely, it's not necessarily a starter job. They want some people with experience, but they don't say how much is nice. They're interested in people who are interested in combining video editing with visual effects. Basically, they really mean motion graphics, by the way. Okay. And they want people to understand how editing for social media is different than editing for, say, television or something else. Definitely true. The different platforms like social media and versus broadcast have very, very different audiences. Things for social media are usually a lot quicker, a lot shorter. Okay, because most people aren't going to sit in front of their phone for 20 minutes watching a single video. Whereas you can get people to sit in front of a film screen to watch a movie. Okay. On the right side of this, there's basically talking about what they recommended. They wanted you to look at their social media content. It's actually pretty cool. Let's see if this is what you want to do. Okay. And then they had a cover letter information. They want to basically know why you want to work for them. Okay, that's not bad. They're looking for someone who's really interested in creating content for them. Okay. Now, I looked at their content. I'm not into sports, so this is not the kind of job I would ever apply for, because I don't care about the content. I admit that, by the way. So, but they're looking for someone with passion, for someone interested in actually creating and telling a story, because in the end, video editors are storytellers. Okay. You wouldn't be shooting the video in this. You would basically have footage given to you and have to figure out how to tell a compelling story from hundreds of hours of footage. Okay. And they even say here, by the way, you're looking to take these hundreds of hours of footage, because again, documentary style, and craft it into an engaging, compelling story. That's what they're looking for. So again, a large aspect of video editing isn't only technical skill. It's basically your ability to take completely different and separate content and craft it into something people are going to care about. To craft a story, a narrative that people will actually want to engage with. Right? For social media, for video on social media specifically, one of the major things people are looking for, according to my social media, according to my social media consultant, is human engagement, human interaction. Okay, and that's what they want. Okay. This is SiriusXM. SiriusXM is a satellite radio producer. Okay. Now, basically, they were looking for a video editor, which they actually called a part-time job, actually, to create promotional material, often from Zoom recordings, which I think is hilarious. Okay, so they are a radio show. They actually make radio content mostly. So it looks like what they were doing is basically taking their interview Zoom video and trying to make promos for it that they can distribute along their social media channels. Okay, it's kind of cool. So again, another social media editor. Over the last decade or so, you've seen the social media grow probably faster than any other segment of video production. Most of the jobs that I see now, I used to produce stuff for, honestly, for like trade shows and for internal presentations. Most things right now are going to social media. But it's fine. Okay. Now, interesting enough, here on the right, this was a ginormous list. I had to make it so small, the text, of actually what they wanted. Okay. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, do I need a college degree to be a video editor? Not necessarily. Okay. The first job posting that we looked at from Overtime did not list any educational requirement. Sirius is for someone with a bachelor's degree, okay, or someone with enough experience to compensate for that. Okay, they also wanted someone with 35 years experience. So again, it's not an entry-level job per se. That's when to do it. Now, if you actually do look in that list, there's a lot of really specific things, like possess a strong editorial eye for developing creative and strategic video programming. Okay, quite project management skills, public speaking skills, presentation skills, written and verbal communication skills. So they actually had a lot of stuff for this. And somewhere in that list, by the way, is they wanted you to be, towards the bottom, ability to shoot in light. So they want someone not only who can edit video, but someone who can actually shoot and light the video as well. Interesting enough, by the way, they didn't mention recording audio, which I think is interesting, but because I assume they're using Zoom for that. But this is an interesting job because it basically combines not only an editor's skill set, and also, if you look at the list, a manager's skill set, but they also want someone who understands how to actually do the initial recording themselves as well. So again, depending on what your skill set is, when you know, this may not be a job for you. Okay. By the way, they also list on this proficiency in other software like After Effects, Photoshop, that sort of thing. So they want someone who can not only basically edit the video that they already have, they want someone who can help them shoot and create more video, and someone who can create graphics to go along with that video. Okay. So this is actually what you're seeing a lot now. When I went to school, editors just edited. That's it. That's all I did. Okay. But now you're also seeing job requests where editors also do graphics, very often After Effects. You're also seeing job requests where editors are responsible for helping to record audio. Okay. Where they're helping basically shooting audio. So a lot of things that are kind of one-person bands. One person kind of does it all. So there's a lot more merging of the skill sets here than there used to be, again, when I first got into this many years ago. Okay. So that's what you need. A lot of people come to us from different places. Yes, I have a master's degree in this area, but most of the people I work with don't. Most of the video editors I know do not have master's degrees. Some of them did 4-year degrees, some of them didn't. Some of them got into this by teaching themselves the software and have come in with a really good demo reel. Okay. So it varies. It varies. There is no one way of getting into this industry at all. But once you're there, there's also no one path or one job title. So you might start off as a junior assistant editor. You might move up to editor, senior editor. You might be working in a job that has you both doing the editing and shooting a video. It varies, okay? A lot of places, especially the startups, have a kind of like entrepreneurial feel where everyone kind of does everything. It depends. Usually at larger companies, they tend to be more stratified, so you do one thing and that's it. Smaller companies tend to need someone who can jump in a lot of different areas. So it varies what you're looking to do. If you're looking to freelance, then maybe all you're going to do is edit. If you're looking for a staff position, the more you know, the better. Okay. Now, that's basically the end of the presentations. So, what does an actual editor do on a project? So, let's look at this. Let me hide my expressions. Okay, cool. So this is Premiere Pro. So let's say I was talking before about a skating video. Okay. So let's say that you are given a job to create a skating promo video. And whoever wants you to do the job has an idea, concept, what they want, so you'd meet with them and you discuss what their concept is. You take notes, of course, because that's how we do it all. And you come up with an idea of what you want to show. Now, maybe this client already has some music in mind, some audio in mind. Okay. So maybe they give you an audio for the background. Now you're going to have to make sure that they have the legal rights to use that, but that's a different issue. So we'll assume that in this case they have. Maybe they're also giving you some video. Maybe that video is created by them. Maybe, again, they have a skate park. Okay. Again, I'm going to assume for these purposes that I have the legal rights to use the video as well. Okay. Maybe the video is from a stock website. Okay, no problem at all. Assuming that I'm not going to go out and shoot more video. Even if I get video from a client, I may have to actually supplement that with stock footage, depending, again, on what the story is, what we're trying to make. Okay. So let's look at some of this. Let me hide Premiere for a second. Okay. So I have this folder here called, on my desktop, called Promo Skateboarding. Okay. And in that folder, I have another folder called media. I like folders, by the way. Folders inside of folders inside of folders. Okay, I'm nice and organized. That's how I was taught to work. So in my media folder, I have a video, text, and audio folder. If I open them up, it's video, like here's 2 skateboarders, like that. Oh, let's look at that. I got some video. Okay, no problem at all. Interesting. Okay, I've got an audio file. Okay, and I've actually got 2 audio files because I needed to make some adjustments. And then I've got some text. The text is actually, this is a quote by Tony Hawk. And I wanted to work this quote in maybe at the beginning, something as an opening for this. And I'm thinking maybe, instead of just using text on the screen, maybe to animate that in After Effects. Okay. So, for something like this, I'm given an original audio file. I'd listen to it. I'd actually open it up in Audition. Let's open it up in Audition, by the way. With Audition. Okay. Is Audition. Because the first thing I want to check with my audio is how loud it is. Okay, this is Audition. So, this is a waveform. It's a representation of volume over time. Okay. So if you're recording your audio, by the way, normally you're told to record your audio somewhere between -10 and -20 decibels. This is a lot higher than that. A lot higher. Okay. Now this is a song, so it's digitally recorded. Let me actually. Okay. And it's really loud. Red for the record. Red is loud. Okay. So green, when it comes to volume, green is good. Red is bad. Red is very, very bad. Okay. So again, if I was doing this for broadcast television, I would need the audio somewhere around -12 decibels. Okay. If I'm doing it for output on the internet, there's no standard. So I'd probably go somewhere around -3, -5 for that. Did not mean for that to pop up. Sorry, buddy. So that's fine. So I would adjust this. I'd alter it. I would tweak it if I needed to. Okay. And when I did that, I basically ended up with that file, the normalized file. That's what we're going to work with in Audition. Okay. So any audio that needs to be adjusted, I would do that first. Okay. Let me close Audition. Okay. So basically, I used Audition's tools to check the audio volume, see what it was at, and then I adjusted it and pulled it down to television, which is like -12. When I first listened to this music, it was really like blowing out my eardrums loud. So I adjusted that. Okay. So I want to bring all this stuff into my video editing program. See what I got. Okay. That's Premiere. So the first thing in Premiere is I need to make a project. And then I'm going to bring my footage in the project. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to review it, see what we have, and see if it makes any sense visually. Because sometimes when I get stuff from clients, it's not necessarily the best footage that we could use. Okay. But I got to try. So I'll make a new project. Okay. I'm going to call this skateboard promo. And I'm going to choose where to save it. I'm just going to browse. I'm going to put it back in that folder, by the way. Okay. It wants to, by default, save it into the documents folder, and I would never find it again. So I'm basically trying to keep everything together. So I'm going to keep everything on my desktop in that skateboarding promo, that promo skateboarding folder. I'm just going to choose that as the location to save my project. Premiere Pro makes you save a project first. The reason it does this is because it needs to actually make files of its own. So the rest of this I can leave at the defaults. At some point, by the way, for those of you, if you're going to use Premiere Pro, this entire interface changes. Completely changes, by the way. Right now in the beta, they're trying out a completely different layout. So basically, since you don't change these menus very often, they decided, well, if you don't change these very often, why are they in front of your face when you make a new project? So eventually this dialog box is going to completely look different. It's going to have the name and location and then something very, very different in the middle. I don't know when that'll be released, but it will change, so everything changes. I'm going to say okay. So the name and the location are the absolutely important things here. Everything else I can change later. Okay, and again, you don't change it very often, so I probably won't be doing that. Say okay, and I'm going to get a project. Makes my project right there. Okay, that's a new project. And that's the project I just made. Okay. Now, so Premiere Pro has what's called a workspace. This is its interface. When you first start the program, you're in learning. Usually people start off in editing, which is the default editing workspace. But I'm not the biggest fan of the default editing workspace, so I've made my own workspace called My Editing. And this is what I'm going to work with. Okay. So just like any other Adobe program, you can completely change the interface by just pulling these windows around, reconfiguring them, and just go into Window, Workspace, and you can actually save that as a new workspace. Okay. The more you use the program, the more you realize you want your own custom workspaces. Okay. So here's what I got. This is the project. When I make a new project, that's what I made. This panel. That's it. Okay. I got a panel called Program. This is going to be where we see our live timeline content. So step one in any video editing program, once you've made your project, you got to import what you want to work with. We call that media, we call that footage, we call it assets, whatever. I call it media or footage usually. So I'm going to import it. And it says literally import media here to start. Okay. You can file import. You can use a keyboard shortcut, Command-I or Control-I. You can right-click in the project panel, import the choice. But my personal favorite is simply double-click in the project panel. If you double-click in the project panel, it opens the import dialog box. Okay. Now, by the way, you can import individual files. If you're on Mac, you can actually import multiple folders, like grab all those folders at once. If you're on Windows, by the way, it will not let you select more than one folder for some reason. Okay. But you can also just do that. You can grab the parent folder. So if I highlight the media folder, because remember there was the media folder, and it had 3 folders, video, text, and audio. If I grab the media folder, it'll import all the subfolders and all their content. Yes, it should. I'm going to import. So I grabbed media. Again, I'm in my promo skateboarding folder where I save my project. Highlight media. It's going to choose import right there. Okay. And it's going to tell me, hey, there was something in here I didn't know what it was. This PKF file. By the way, the PKF file was made by Audition. It's a preview file. So, sure. No problem at all. Okay. Hopefully, this didn't interfere with my import. It just basically stopped that one file from importing. We're going to find that out if I'm right in a second. So, in my preview of the project, I'm going to switch to my list view right here because it gives me a list of the folders. And I'm going to open the folder up. So, audio came in. The 2 audio files that were there came in, ignoring the peak file. Okay. Video came in. I'll make this column a little wider for the name so I can see the full name right there. Okay. So all those video files that were there came in. The one thing that didn't come in exactly the same is there is no text folder, if you notice. Any file, this is a weird glitch in the program, any file that you try to import, any folder you try to import that has a single file in it, it'll only come in as that single file. For some reason, it will not bring in everything. I have no answer why, by the way. But it only does. So that's not a problem. I'm just going to right-click on that. Actually, no, I don't want to right-click on that. I'm actually going to grab that, drag it to the new bin icon. Why did that not work? Oh, that's right. It doesn't want me to do that. Okay, wait. Yeah, I just clicked on the new bin, which is the folder icon, and I basically just made a new bin. I'll click on the name. I'm just going to call it text. So text files are a little strange. Technically, they get imported, but they're not actually media. They're not editable inside of the program. So if I double click on that text file, it basically opens my text editor. So I can just copy and paste from it. So it lets me import them, but technically it doesn't treat them the same way it treats everything else. Like video, for example, if I go here and I right-click on that, I get a lot more options, if you notice. A lot more, including what I was looking for is new bin from sequence selection. So text files, like I said, technically they do import, but it doesn't treat them the same way it treats all the other files. So I'll keep that up there. Okay. So I don't actually want my media bin. I'm just going to drag the other 2 bins out of it by clicking on them and dragging them into space. Media is empty, so I'm going to delete it. Just backspace on the keyboard to delete. I like numbering stuff, so I'm basically going to number video. I'll make it 0, 1, hyphen. You can just say 1, it's not a problem. And whichever column I click on top, that controls the order. So I'm just going to click on the name audio and call it 2. Okay, and text, I'm just gonna call it probably 5. So if I make any other bins, it's the last one. Okay, so that's not bad. I got that. It's kind of cool. Let's see our audio. This is the original file, the one I said was too loud. This is the one that I made in Audition, the normalized one. This is actually a lot lower. If I double click on that, I can preview it right here. If I double click on the first one, by the way, that's much taller. Height is volume. Okay. So again, this normalized one that I basically made earlier is the one I want to work with. Okay. So if I play that, I can actually hear it. It'll basically play it or go through, and that's not bad. So I've got that, no problem at all. But I need to actually make some more stuff. So I know that I want to use this music. Okay. I know that I want to use the music, but I would also like to see what my video is. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to double click on the video. Now I can't really see this. I can just see the names. That's not helpful. So I'm going to switch my view to icon view. This is a visual preview of this. Okay, and if I hover my cursor and move it left and right over the little thumbnail previews, I can basically hover, scrub, and preview them to see what's here. So I can get an idea of what this looks like visually. Okay. If there's audio in it, I cannot hear the audio when I scrub this. It just simply does not play the audio. But if I do need to hear audio, if I do need to hear it, I can click on the preview, just tap spacebar on my keyboard, and it'll play if it has audio. All of these, by the way, have the audio stripped for this video. So not an issue at all. Okay. So I can see what this looks like. It's not bad, but they're a little small. I can adjust that. There's a little like slider here to make them bigger. I can double click on the window to make it larger so I can get a nice big preview here if I want it. Okay. So it's easier to see. So I'm thinking that the order I'd want to use this in would start with this nice overview of the city. So I'll drag it to the beginning. I like that. Okay. And I'm thinking as they're skating over the rooftops, which is kind of nice, really nice drone shot with that. I'm thinking that I'd want to go to the underground now. Okay. I'm thinking that maybe this might be a good clip to go next of the kids doing trick shots in the playground. It's actually a skate park. Okay. But, you know what I realized is before all of that, maybe this shot of him lacing up his skates is a better choice for my first opening shot. So I'll drag that to the beginning. This is called a storyboard edit. It basically allows me to organize how I want my footage displayed so that I can try to figure out and organize my story. Okay, not bad. I kind of like those pieces. Those are actually pretty good. I want to vary my shot distance, so this is actually fair, like a nice mid shot. I'm thinking maybe going to a close-up of someone doing the tricks might be kind of cool at that point, too. And then I don't want to actually end up on the shot of them from behind, so I'll make that my second to last shot and soon my last one. Okay. That's not bad. That might be kind of cool. And some of these I might want to use more than once. I mean, this nice aerial shot's really pretty cool. I might want to have this is a nice, like, establishing shot of the area, and then maybe show the bridge or that sort of thing flying out over it. So I might want to use it at the end as well. Who knows? Okay. Well, with this, I can basically organize it into... a nice little visual layout so I can figure out and see what's here. Okay, and that's called a storyboard edit. Okay. I'll double click again and get it back to normal. I have to resize them manually, by the way. Okay. Now, I got an idea of how I want to use these things, but I don't have any place to put them. If I double click on a clip, I can preview it in Source, which lets me see it, listen to it. It lets me also do something called trimming it to shorten or pull out parts of it. Okay, but that's it. If I want to assemble these together, I need some place to do that, and that's called a sequence. At least it's called a sequence here. It allows me to basically lay out my content. So I need a sequence. Sequences display on the timeline where it says currently no sequences. So I've made my project, I imported my files, I previewed my files, but now I need someplace to put them. Okay. we can do that. Now, if I hover over these clips, I can see what size they are. These are all look like different sizes. I'll hover over them, that sort of thing. That. So this one, if I look at the second line, 3840 by 2160, that one is as well. These are 4K files. Some of them are actually extra wide screen, these 4096 ones. So there's several different sizes that go into my project here. Okay. So I could have footage that's high def, maybe 1920 by 1080 or 1280 720. These are all pixels, by the way. I can have footage that is 4K. I can have footage that's ultra wide screen, that's maybe 6K or 8K as well. So there's a lot of different sizes that this video can be made in right now. Okay. But I got to make my sequence in one of them, and I'm going to make it for whatever the majority of my footage is, which is this 4K size. So I like this clip. It's going to be the first one I want to use, but do I want to really use all of it? I don't really think so. I'm thinking I only want to use a little bit of it while he's tying his shoes. It's a nice little part right here. Okay, so I'm just going to trim this clip. I don't want the beginning before 19 frames. I moved my playhead to where I want to trim the clip. I trim the clip, mark in. This dark gray area is now not going to be included when I add this clip to my timeline. That gives me a 3-second clip, by the way. Okay. That's not bad. I like that nice movement right there. So that's kind of cool. I like that. I'll mark that as the out. So now this 2-second clip is what I want to use. I'm just going to grab it and drag it to my timeline. It's going to make my sequence for me. Like so. Okay. Now, by the way, I could just use this to make the first thing in my sequence. Maybe I didn't want to use that. I could delete it, but I still got my sequence. I'm going to go back to my project. Somewhere here's my sequence right there. The program took the name of the file, Man Tying His Shoes, and used that to make the sequence. So it made it based on the same width, the same height, the same frame rate, which is the speed of the video, and all those things. But I don't want that name. I'm going to call this one Promo Main. Promo Skateboarding Main. Okay. Now that's my sequence. And now I can start adding stuff to it. But I'm going to start with my audio. So I'm going to grab my audio file. Okay. And I'm going to listen to it first. This is like 29 seconds, about basically 30 seconds pretty much. So that'll work. I like that. I'm going to drag that into my timeline. Now I can't really see this. So I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut. Shift plus makes them nice and tall. Nice and tall. Okay. Now, if I listen to this, I don't really want to start with this really loud music at the beginning, so I'm just going to right-click on that audio clip, apply default transition, and that's going to give me a nice fade up for this. Okay. Now, as I'm listening to this, there are parts in my music, my beat, that are basically higher and lower. So when I'm cutting something as a promo, I'm cutting some music video, I want to cut, and the cuts are where each clip ends, to match the beat. So when I made this clip, I just made an arbitrary length. I want to actually have it match the change in beat right there. And as you play it, as you listen to it, and as you zoom in, which is plus on the keyboard, you can see changes in the music where it's higher. Right about there actually is a change. I'll take my selection tool. I'm just going to drag that clip and make it longer so now it lines up right there. So for my next clip, it'll be right as the music changes, and that's going to hide those edits better. Like that. Minus on my keyboard zooms out of my timeline. Plus on my keyboard zooms in. Backslash on my keyboard fits everything in my timeline. And then I would go grab my next clip. Figure out where I want it to start and stop. Add that to my timeline. And so on and so forth. Until I get a nice rough layout of my clips. And that'll be my rough cut. I would then use the editing tools in the program to refine that rough cut. And I just keep working it and make it more and more refined. Okay, that's the basic editing process. And yes, I really simplified it. And yes, I really kind of did it quickly because I only have about 2 more minutes, by the way, in the session. So, because it ends at 7:15, if I recall correctly. So, yeah, it's an hour and 50 minutes. That's how long it's scheduled for, actually. So, I let a couple more minutes. I basically cut it down. But, in general, the music for a promo like this, or for a music video, or something with a voiceover, it's audio driven. so it's the first thing on your timeline. Okay. I don't want to actually anything I do to screw up the music, so I would use one of the common features in video editing programs to lock the timeline. Okay. Like that. Like so. So once that's been locked, nothing I do can interact with it. I can then freely add the rest of my clips, adjust them, trim them, shorten them, delete them, whatever I want. No problem at all. One last note is that the timeline itself, I did Shift plus to make it taller, Shift minus makes it shorter. The timeline itself, the video tracks they're called, are actually work like layers in other programs. You're familiar with those, where we can stack content one on top of the other. The program Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro and Avid and all major video editing programs have features for creating basic graphics, basic animation, and basic text. So they do actually have compositing features of their own. But for serious animation, you'd probably want to basically send that out to After Effects or Motion if you're using Final Cut Pro to do it. So that's a general overview of the video editing process. And this is a little bit about how to use Premiere to do that. But the same thing I did here with Premiere, I could have done with Avid, Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, or any other video editing program that exists. Certain aspects of the video editing process are global. Specifically things like how to cut, the principles of editing will work no matter what software you use. Okay? That's the cool part. Okay? So, yes, I make money at this point editing and teaching editing. So I have my own preferences. I admit that, by the way. But in the end, you could use anything. There's a program that you get almost for free when you buy a new Mac, iMovie. There was actually a film at South by Southwest about 10 years ago edited in iMovie, which is not considered professional level editing, but it can work. Okay. So some things, again, like I said, are global, and they'll always work no matter what you do. Cool. And other things you'll find are better with the professional level programs. The real reason to learn professional editing software is if you plan to work in certain industries where that software is prevalent. If I want to work in editing in New York City, I have to match what they want me to use. I can't say, hey, I don't know that. I know iMovie. They're not going to listen to me. So that's honestly why we teach it. Cool. That's it in my presentation, pretty much. Questions? No questions? If you have questions, type them in the chat window. Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Hope you enjoyed it. No one? No one? No questions? Okay. Just again, I gotta do it. So again, I work for Noble Desktop, and we are a software training company located in New York City. We offer classes that are both live in New York City and also live online via Zoom. This is our website, nobledesktop.com. And hopefully I've interested you maybe in taking a class. We actually have a new group of classes running for our video editing and motion graphics certificate starting in April. So hopefully I'll see some of you in class. But again, even if you don't take classes with us, there's plenty of places you can take classes. You can also learn this on your own. When I first started this, there was no other way to learn it. You basically had to go to school for it. But a lot of this, there's a lot of tutorials throughout YouTube. Adobe has their own references to their website. And they also have built into the program, Premiere Pro anyway, a learning built-in tutorial system. So if you're looking to increase your skills, maybe like pick up some new skills, yes, definitely consider taking classes with us. If you already know the software, just looking to like improve it, the built-in learning environment for these tutorials I'll walk you through may be helpful for you as well. Always fun. There's a lot of ways to the top of the mountain. So once again, I'm Jaron Smith for Noble Desktop, and thank you for attending our seminar on getting started in video editing. Next week, we have another seminar, Getting Started in Motion Graphics, where I'll talk about how the motion graphics industry works, which is, while it's related to video editing, is not technically the same thing. And I'll also talk about how to get jobs there. I'll talk about the software that they use in those industries and all the different ways you can combine cool stuff together. Okay. In that one, hopefully I'll have time and I'll show you a little bit of After Effects and how that's used to create animation and graphics. And hopefully I'll have a lot of fun. We try to do these free seminars a couple times a month. We cover a lot of different things like videography design. We also do some that are on the software itself, like introduction to After Effects and that sort of stuff. So some of them are basically industry-based, and others are more software-based. We're also trying this year to start some that are more specific, like for those of you who may already know After Effects or Premiere Pro, some 1 hour, 1.5 hour seminars that are basically on specific things like text animation, After Effects, and that sort of stuff. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've enjoyed your time with me. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. I'll stay online for a couple more minutes. If there are any questions, you can just direct them to the chat window, and I'll try to address them. And if not, thank you for attending, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your night. Hope I haven't bored you too much. Cool. No questions? Okay. Enjoy the rest of the night, everyone. Thank you for attending our our getting started in video editing workshop. Once again, I'm Jaron Smith for Noble Desktop.